Hi everyone, this is Gail and welcome to my Be Bodacious live stream tonight. I see we've already got Peter Parker in. He is first in here today. So, hey Peter, it's good to see you. And for those of you who are tuning in for the replay, it's good to see you all too. Do make sure that you give me a like on the video and do subscribe to join us on our adventures. Because my service dog Pipsy and I are trying to document our travels as we travel and our life experiences in general. So we do travel, lifestyle, and service dog videos and live streams. So it's good to see everyone here. A few weeks ago, I asked if you all had any questions about service dogs. Wow. You all have definitely blown me away. Blown me right away. So, I have a long list of questions from you all about service dogs. I don't know if I'm going to get to all of them or not, but if I don't worry. I'll do another live stream to give you all a chance to interact and ask more questions. And you're always welcome to leave a comment. I have the questions over here on this screen. So let's see, what do I have? 14, 15? I'm just guessing. I actually should have numbered them, but I didn't. So it looks like probably about 15 questions that we're going to get to talk about today. So excited everybody's here. We've also been joined by Laurel Stewart. And Laurel has Candy the Wee Service Dog, and she has been a guest on this channel when we've talked about service dogs in the past. Her started out life as an ESA and then was trained for service. And she is adorable. Just saying. We've actually met in real life. So welcome. So, okay. So I talked a second ago and said that we do travel and lifestyle and service dog. And the first question up is about travel with service dogs. But I do want to preface this by saying I've been a service dog handler since 2007. It's hard to believe how time flies. I'm on my second service dog, Pipsy. My first one, Tomlin, he was a husky mix with personality galore. And I now have Pipsy, who's got his own personality. He's a lab, and he is just really, really sweet. In fact, I'm going to show you a little picture of him as soon as I pull him up. So my service dogs have done different duties. My first one did a lot of seizure alert. He could carry things for me. He could tug things. Just really super stocky because he was a husky mix. And pulling, as we all know, if you've ever heard of the Iditarod, pulling is what huskies and a lot of husky mix dogs excel at. I'm going to give you a picture of Pipsy right here. He's the lab. I'm not sure what he's trying to tell me in this photo. It wasn't an alert. He was more like, I think, Mom, what are you thinking? What are you doing? That kind of thing. Because sometimes he just looks at me like, I don't understand you, you silly human. And anybody who has a pet or a service dog will understand exactly what I mean by that comment. So super duper, super duper. But I started the journey in 2007, and it has been a long journey filled with interesting moments and lots of calls to the Department of Justice for the ADA helpline to get information when I had questions about being the mom of a service dog. So I'm going to show you a picture really quick of my previous service dog. And this has been, like I said, this has been a journey. And it's been interesting having the contrast between the two different service dogs. So that is Tomlin, I can't say little, my husky mix. So my lab is a lot smaller than him, but that's okay. Like I said, he was more tugging and alerting and so forth. And my current service dog is more for mobility, balance, things like that, because your needs can change over time, and that can necessitate a different type of service dog. And sometimes you'll see people with more than one service dog, and that's why. Hey, we've got over 50 and fantabulous in the house. So, hi, Lynn. And I see that Laurel has put on Candy the Wee Service Dogs channel. Do check that out too. She says Candy has been her service dog since 2015. And you'll also want to check out Lynn's channel at Over 50 and Fantabulous. So there you go. And don't take any of this as legal advice. I guess I should make sure everybody knows that. It's down in the description box, though. But everything's based on my experience with being a handler since, like I said, 2007. So, all right. First question up on the list is, oh, I hit the wrong button. Okay. Can service dogs travel in an RV or van? And I just love this question because I cannot tell you how many miles I have put on Pipsy and how many miles I put on Tomlin in their lifetimes traveling in the van or the RV. And so what I found is we have a travel trailer, and in the van, I really prefer traveling in that with my service dog because he has access to water all the time, because I have a little bowl out in the van, and I do things to keep it cool so it doesn't get warm when we're out in the store and stuff like that. And he has access to his toys and his bed anytime we're out riding in the van. And of course, if we go in a store, he's with me. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on traveling in a van. I love it. And as far as the RV goes, he can't really travel in the back of the RV when we're driving, so he's still up in the car with us. But when we're in the RV at night, he has his everything in its place for him. So he knows where his water is and where his food is. And he also knows where the treats are, which leads to some interesting moments because sometimes he'll go to his treat container, or where it is on the counter rather, and he will sit there and he will stare at me and he will stare at the treat. And then he will look back and stare at me, and then he will look back and stare at the treat. So he has his own place in the RV. Now, he has gone into hotels several times with me as well. But the question is, can they travel in a van or RV? And the answer is yes. They actually, at least my experience on my two service dogs, they travel great in an RV or a van or a car. They just travel. And the next one up, I actually kind of paraphrased this a little bit to the question of, can seniors benefit from having a service dog? And the answer is yes. Seniors can and often do benefit from a service dog by being a handler. And the other half of the question, or kind of the lead up into the question, the person was saying that most frequently the service dogs that she has seen have been for kids. And she was wondering if her mother might benefit if they worked it out and got her a service dog. Her mother, and I don't think I'm sharing too much from what she said on the email, but her mother has diabetes and a heart condition and some other things going on. So she was wondering if, as a senior citizen, could she get a service dog and would she benefit from it? So, yes. I'm an AARP member, proud member of AARP because I like the discounts. And definitely, I have a lot of benefit. But I can see too why she's asking this because a lot of young people are having service dogs. And what do you all think? I know, Candy, I think you would agree with me that seniors are great when it comes to benefiting from service dogs. Um, we derive a lot of benefit. Um, and I think I'm just going to guess here, okay? My experience as an adult might be different from a child's experience, but I think that you're going to have, depending on what the dog is trained for, let's pick on diabetic alerts, okay? Say you have the diabetic alert dog, you're going to get the same benefit out of the dog alerting whether you're a child or an adult because the dog's going to let you know. And speaking of service dogs, hello, what are you doing? Yeah, the tail that you see behind me belongs to this guy who came in to join us. You want to come here? You're just going to roll. Okay. Hang on. I got to do a tummy rub here. There you go. There you go. All right. Hop up. Okay. So he got his belly rubbed and he's happy. All right. So, you've got that benefit. So for kids or adults, but it's all about the training of the dog, I think, more so than the age of the person who has the dog. So, yes, seniors can have service dogs, and we get a lot of benefit, just as kids do. But personally, I've always seen a mix of adults and kids. I haven't seen it like just kids. If you all have, drop me a comment, let me know. Okay. And yeah. What are you doing? You going to answer some of these questions? Okay. He's got a second bed back here, I think he's going for. Let me see. Let me see. Are you going to show him your pretty face? Are you? Oh. No, I tell you what, I really didn't need this, but thank you for bringing it to me. Here, carry it to Dad. Go find it. Clearly, he thought I should play. Sorry about that, you all. But he's a mess. So thank you, Lynn. He's a mess. He brought me his toy, so clearly he thinks I should play. Not right now, though. Okay. Moving right along. Do service dogs have to wear a vest? And the answer is no. It's when you don't have him dressed, it's called working him naked. And it's totally allowable by the ADA not to wear a vest or a harness or to have a special leash or anything like that. I'm going to look it up here where service dogs are allowed, inquiries. It's on the ADA page. I've got the link down there in the description box. Let's see. And okay, I can't find it real quick. Let me just do a quick Google search using the link that's below because I want to read you exactly what it says. And I also want to address something about this, and that is the other day I was actually in a store when this came up. It was not because of me that it came up, but a young woman was there with her service dog, and we came across the corner at the produce section at about the same time, and our service dogs almost collided. So good thing They're both very well trained, but hers was not dressed. And she got really nervous and she started stammering and stuttering around, saying, "Oh well, in my state, my state doesn't require a vest." And I'm like, "No, it's not the state. It is federal, and you don't have to worry about it." And she was under the impression from her service dog trainer that it was only a state law, and it's not. Here we go. Pulling it up here so you all can see this. But the other thing I want to say is, if you are out there and you are working your dog naked, okay, and your dog is not in a vest and not in a harness, it's okay. Don't feel like you owe anybody an apology or an explanation, because you don't, okay? You're fine. So it says right here, ADA law, under, you may ask, because service animals are not required to wear vests. A dog that is wearing a vest is not necessarily a service animal. We can talk about that a little bit later. The dog still needs to be trained to perform a task. So there it is. It's all in the thing. So as long as your dog is trained, that's what makes the service dog, not the outfit. So ADA does not require that. Okay. And here it is when you scroll on down and go to About Service Animals, which is farther down the page. And this is from the link down there in the description box. Okay. So it says on here under About Service Animals, and this is ADA law done through the Department of Justice. And it says service animals are not required to wear a vest or other ID that indicates they're a service dog. Okay. Not required. And there are times when you are not going to have your service animal dressed. Also, miniature horses can also be service dogs. I'm going to, let's see. Oh, here we go. And thank you again, Lynn. St. Candy says seniors still need to have a disability that the dog mitigates their specific task. Absolutely. And she's also pointing out that federal rights trump state laws. Absolutely. And sometimes you'll run into a situation where somebody will argue with you about that, and they'll try to say, well, our state law is that you have to. No, you don't. And there are legitimate reasons why you might not want to put your dog in a vest, especially like with me, if it was summer. I didn't put Tomlin in a vest that much because Tomlin was a husky mix. So he had this double fur coat, and it was just so hot sometimes in the summer, especially like traveling, going back to the question about the van or the RV. Especially if we were traveling and we were like in southern Texas or going through parts of Oklahoma or southern New Mexico. In the summer, it can get really, really hot. So if I have him and we're going to go outside and go into a store or whatever, I oftentimes didn't put him in a vest. Sometimes I might have it draped over my arm. But if we're just making a quick trip in the store, I would just not put him in the vest because it was just so hot. Pipsy doesn't wear a vest. Pipsy wears a harness, and I've got a cape that can clip onto his harness. So that's where my EpiPen and some meds and information is. And again, with him, if it's warm, I won't always have that cape on him. I may not have his harness on him. Because if it's warm, y'all know what it's like for us as humans. We'll go and it might be hot, and maybe our jeans start binding or the seatbelt starts feeling tight. We don't like it, and they don't either. So there are legitimate reasons why you might not have your service dog in a harness or a vest. and you don't have to apologize for that. Now, it will draw more attention if you don't have your service dog in a vest, but that's okay. Just remember that there are two questions that you're allowed to be asked, and that is this a service dog required because of the disability, and what work or task has he been trained to do? And of course, the answer is yes, if you've got a service dog. And then you can tell them as much as you're comfortable with. If your dog does medical alerts, it's okay to say medical alert. You don't have to tell them, well, he checks for blood sugar and he lets me know about seizures. If I have an asthma attack and I start wheezing at night and I haven't woken up yet, he'll wake me up. And, you don't have to give them the long list. If you don't want to, you can just say medical alert. Or in my case, medical and mobility. And sometimes I'll just leave it at that. And we are joined by the Texas Service Dog Team. I'm here, caught you live. So yay! Yay. And she also has a great channel. So check her out too. If you have a service dog, Texas Service Dog Team and Candy the Wee Service Dog are both great resources. So check them out. And as we are here, I just realized, Texas Service Dog Team, that I forgot to text you back. And I meant to do that, but we got in late last night, the other night. So slightly off topic, but there's my apology, and I'm sorry. I'll text you tomorrow if that's okay. And Texas Service Dog Team can probably tell you all about the heat in Texas in the summer. So there you go. Candy the Wee Service Dog says the only places service dogs are not allowed are in sterile environments, hospital surgery rooms, for example. Churches are exempt from allowing service dogs. However, if you're a member of the church, they will usually accommodate your service dog. Yes, and I have done that many times. Taken Pipsy in. I mean, he goes to meetings with me at churches. He will go if I'm speaking at a church or if I'm attending an event. He goes. Only once have I had any kind of question about that as far as a church is concerned. But building off of her comment, I did go to a Christian retreat center and needed to catch the shuttle bus to go where I needed to go. And boom, he wouldn't pick me up. So I had to, first I called the Department of Justice and I'm like, hey, what gives here? And then I was like, okay. And that's when I found out confirmation that they do not have to let you. So I went to the head of the retreat center and I'm like, hey, I have this dog. He's a legitimate service dog because I need him to help me with mobility and medical alerts. Can we work something out? And they were more than willing to accommodate, but I had to let them know. Okay. And as far as hospitals, I will show you that, yes, they have to be allowed pretty much everywhere you go except like those sterile environments. So there you go. And they let him in the hospital with me. And the hospital, okay, one of the ones that I went to recently, which unfortunately is like way too many hospitals, they actually took it a step further and they asked me, would I mind telling them how my dog alerted? And I did not mind, but that's personal preference. But I will tell you that they asked and explained the reason we're asking is not to be nosy. But if you're in the emergency room and your dog alerts and we know it's an alert, we know we have to get to your room. And I was like, that makes perfect sense. And so what happened was he was at the end of my stretcher and had his little nose right up at the end of the stretcher, just kind of looking around. And they were like, does he want up? And I was like, yes. And boom, he jumped up. And, I had told him this is what he does and how. And so at that point, the nurse said, okay, what we'll do is we'll essentially treat him as part of the medical equipment that we have in the room. We'll just treat it like your medical equipment and acknowledge that that's what my service dog is. And so for me, it made me feel better because they were treating him as basically part of the team. Okay. So let me see. Texas Service Dog Team says they're also not allowed in swimming pools. It kind of depends. They Yes and no. I've had the experience where there was no problem because one of the things that he's supposed to do is help me if I have a seizure. And if I was to have a seizure in the water, he would be allowed into the water for that purpose. That came up at a hotel. But I don't get in the water, because I might have a seizure in the water, and it's rare. But I will say that did happen to a family member, and we did fish her out of the water. So it's okay oftentimes to have them in the pool area, but not necessarily in the water. So that could be. Let's see. Turkey. Okay, and Texas Service Dog Team says, yes, there are many times I worked my dog naked because of the heat. So yeah, absolutely not something anybody has to apologize over. Candy says, Candy is the first canine member of our church. They officially announced it and explained what not to do around service dogs. That is so cool. Now, Pipsy has not been deemed a member of the church yet. But if he goes to many more meetings, he may get that honorary de facto credit there. So, yeah. And let's see over here. Okay, and Texas Service Dog has a good point, going back to some churches not allowing the service dog, and that is some religions believe it's an abomination to let a dog in the church. And that is a really good point. Not all of us have that, but if you are going to a church and you belong to one of the religions that believe it's an abomination, then you already know that. And even if you're okay, let me give me a second to formulate my thought here. Okay, so here's what I think, and that is, if you're a service dog handler and you are visiting somebody's house of worship, respect their rules. It's a matter of respect, not to cause a scene or cause a ruckus. If your dog's not allowed, your dog's not allowed. If they don't want the dog in, don't take your dog in. Okay? Be respectful, please. So there you go. But thank you very much for bringing that up. My service dog rode in an ambulance with me. Perfect. And if you're listening to this at some point and you're a member of EMS, please remember it is okay and expected for a service dog to ride in an ambulance. And if there's no room, figure something out, basically. So, yeah. And Candy the Wee Service Dog says, some hospitals ask you to bathe your dog if you're visiting a patient that has a compromised immune system, like cancer patients or other health issues. Okay. I didn't know that. I've never had a problem with that. Nobody's ever asked. And I was actually visiting somebody in COU the other day. And what I did was I was with my husband and I sent him back to go visit, and I stayed in the waiting room. So there are things you can do. But there again, it's a matter of respect. if they don't feel like you should be in that cancer room or the room of somebody with a compromised immune system, be respectful. Okay, there's a reason. Did Candy get baptized? Love that. No, but Candy was given a wafer when we do communion. That's awesome. When we go through communion line, I have something in my pocket, and then we'll kind of step off to the side there, and I'll give Pipsy his. So that's so cool. Okay, let's see. Oh, and as I tap this on the table to straighten out my pages, print this off. Okay, ADA requirements, service animals. If somebody gives you a really hard time, whip this out. I have a copy that I keep in my backpack. I've got a copy that I put in his cape. Refer to this. This is the big boss, okay? ADA.gov, Department of Justice. So take that. And I also like to have a copy of the law for all the states that I'm traveling through, because that can be helpful too. So yeah. And let's see. Candy was allowed in the pre-op room and recovery room when my husband had surgery. There you go. He is program trained, and Texas Service Dog Team is asking if he's owner trained or program trained. So my first one, Tomlin, he was owner trained with the assistance of trainers, and I'm so glad I had them, because I would have messed his training up a million times had it not been for the trainers. Second dog, Pipsy, is program trained. He was trained in prison, and I cannot say enough good about this program. They were phenomenal. Absolutely, they're phenomenal. And if anybody wants to know about that program or the type of training he had, I can do a live stream or a video on that. But yeah, and I will tell you, when I looked at the cost, there was reasons that I went with the program dog. Let's see. The next one. What tasks can service dogs be trained to perform? All right, you all, help me out here, because dogs can be trained to do like a million different things. And I can tell you what mine is trained to do and what I have talked with other people whose dogs were trained to do. But we've got other service dog handlers in the house. So if you all want to pitch in, if I miss something or when I miss something, if you want to type it in, go ahead. So with Pipsy, he alerts for diabetes. He alerts for seizures. If I am asleep and I have asthma, and it's no fun, and it's interferes with life a bunch of times. Y'all have heard me trying to cough and wheeze through live streams. And if I'm asleep and I start wheezing, I may not always wake up until it gets pretty bad. And I think it's because he can hear better, but he has woken me up a few times now. And when I woke up, I realized I was wheezing and I needed to get my inhaler. And he alerted to that and woke me up. We're still trying to get him not to jump up and down on me when that happens, but hey, at least he's waking me up. So he does those three things. Plus, he helps me with the mobility. He will help me balance and brace, and he'll do counterbalance. That's why he wears a harness. He will, if I'm home, and if I put it where I'm supposed to, he will go get my pouch that's got my asthma inhaler in it and bring it to me. When I fall, he can go get help. Like a few weeks ago when I fell and bruised my ribs, and he could go up the driveway and get my husband. He can go get help if I need more than what he can do. And, he retrieves. If I drop a pill bottle, he will go retrieve it and bring it to me. And hello. And he also interrupts live streams. What are you doing? What have you got? Okay, it's not my shoe. Um, and he will still go and get shoes sometimes. Also, Texas Service Dog Team says DPT, walking, barrier control, crying or self-harm interrupting, fetching help, fetching meds, picking up dropped objects, and turning lights on and off. Absolutely. And they can also be trained to open the door if you have a handle that the dog can push down on, then he can push down and open that door. And that can be very helpful if EMS needs to come into your house. So, and let's see. Candy, the service dog was allowed in the x-ray room, CAT scan. The technician only had Candy to be behind the line on the floor to prevent exposure to radiation. There you go. And this was when I've had to have the test done. Yeah, very helpful stuff here. Let's see. Hey, Valerie Reese, it's all about the adventure is in the house. Hi, Valerie. And yeah, any Texas Service Dog Team has the opposite problem that I do, saying anytime I don't put my shoes in the proper place, Story brings them to me unrequested. That's awesome. Pipsy will go and get my shoes, or my slippers, and he will scatter them. So I'll go in to put them on, and I'm like, where are they? And he'll go get them. And he also, one of the things that he does is pick the mail up for me. We have the slot in the drawer. So when it hits, I can't always bend down and pick it up. So he does that. Very helpful. Let's see. Candy is a medical alert, medical response for her hiatal hernia flare-ups, blood pressure for both high and low. She reminds me to take my medication. She also does do deep pressure. So, yeah. And honestly, these are just a few things that service dogs do. They can also be trained to keep someone who is autistic anchored, to keep them from not running away or not walking away. They can also be trained to go find. So if the person who has autism is separated from the dog, let's say you have a child and they like to wander, you can tell the dog to go find if they're separated, and the dog will go find the person. And they also help with high heart rate, low heart rate. Let's see. Oh, okay. Well, let me just move the mic. How's that? Yeah, I don't want weird things going on with my shirt. Deep pressure in a small local area of my body. Good deal. Tomlin would do that for me. I have severe leg cramps in my right leg, and he was trained to get up onto that leg, lay down on it to provide the deep pressure therapy, because the heat and the pressure both helps with my leg. Pipsy does that too. Tomlin got to the point where he automatically came over and did it right before my muscles started cramping. Pipsy does it in response, but that's not all dogs are going to alert for every single thing. Case in point. Just anytime you see something like that, just let me know. I am always glad to. Thank you. Because sometimes I get to talking and I don't realize it's going on. So, yeah. Let's see. Okay. Can any breed of dog become a service dog? Yes. I have met people who had pit bulls for service dogs, and I have met Candy the wee service dog, a Chihuahua that was a service dog, and there are all kinds of dogs in between. Now, a lot of people get kind of in this groove, basically, of thinking that service dogs are only golden retrievers or only German Shepherds or only Labrador Retrievers, when in actuality it can be any breed. But you got to remember, it's not the breed that makes the service dog. It's the training that makes a service dog. First, you have to have a need, so you have to have a disability, and then you have to have the training for the service dog. That's what makes it. Okay. Candy the Wee Service Dog is saying that Candy, she, is also a psychiatric service dog for her PTSD, panic and anxiety attacks. There is a difference. Yes, there is. So there you go. Let me see. And I have questions on this screen. So if I'm looking over here and looking at you all, I'm not ignoring you or anything like that. I'm just pulling the questions off. Okay. Um, okay. And Candy's making a good point. Yes, absolutely. All breeds, including banned dogs in your state. I actually had to help somebody with this one time because they were in an area that did not allow pit bulls, and their pit bull was a trained service dog. So I was able to give them a copy of the ADA law. And I want to, as I say this, let me point out that at the bottom of the page where you have the ADA law, this is one of the reasons why I like printing it and taking it with me. There is a helpline. ADA information line is at the bottom. So when you go to ada.gov and you print this off, you're getting a copy of the phone number. So if somebody gives you a hard time once in a while, it will happen. You can say, hey, tell you what, here's a copy of what the ADA says, and here is the phone number. You go ahead and call them. I'll wait right here. A lot of times that's the end of the problem. But anyway, we can talk about that on a different live stream. But I just wanted to know you to know that the information is right here. And this person that I gave the information to was able to take it to the powers that be, and then they backed down and made the exception. So no having to go to court or anything on that. It was just a matter of education. Can you read? Yes. Okay. What can I say to people who ask for certification? All right. Here's the thing. A lot of people have the impression, and fortunately it's getting better, but a lot of people still have the impression that all legit service dogs have a certification. That is not true. Okay. I'm going to repeat it. That is not true. The ADA, it's very plain in here, does not recognize any kind of certification. So don't feel like you have to go and spend money registering your service dog with some organization online that promises you the moon. Save your money. Use that money to go buy treats for your dog, okay? Don't spend it on them. So if you were asked for certification, this is another time when you can whip this out and say, there are 2 questions that you were allowed to ask me. Is this a service dog, and what work or task has he been trained to do? So I am going to tell you, yes, my dog is a service dog, and he is or she is medical alert and mobility. That's all they can ask. So if they insist on certification with me, I'll just stand there and repeating myself. And I will give them my copy of the law and say, here you go. It's right in here. And sometimes they'll argue and they'll say, well, the last legitimate service, that's their big word. Well, the last legitimate service team had certification and they showed me their certification. Please don't do that. If you really need to, if you really, really, really feel like you need to, go ahead, But just realize you're not making it easier on the service dog community, you're making it harder. And if you are asking this question, I hope that this will help educate you, because there is no legitimate service dog certification. When you get a certification, what you're doing is you are telling the person that your dog has been through some type of training. You know how sometimes you'll take a training and you'll get this nice little certificate, and the certificate says you have attended this training? There you go. That's what it's all about. So ADA doesn't recognize anything, so don't do it. Oh my gosh, have we been rated? Oh my gosh. Hi, everybody. Wow. Okay. So let me go back up in here. Welcome, everybody. We now have 36 in the chat. This is amazing. I'm just going to go through and say hi to everybody by just putting you on the screen. Morseverse, hello. Nelax44, hi. Welcome, everybody. Dixon Sider says, good evening. Bounce the Cat says, do long dogs make good service dogs? Any breed, any breed. Oops, I meant pit bulls are banned, not the lady. True. SG Fanboy is here. Hi. Nordic Born is hi. Hi, everybody. What is your service dog's 1992 story? I've been a handler since 2007 is my story. Dabble Jew, I need a long training dog seminar, please. My dog, okay. Now, Trick Taylor is in. Eric Pick is in. Okay, Stacey Allen, my service dog has an eye headache. Tips on treatment. I don't do medical advice. You'll need to go to the vet for that. We now have 43 in the house. Thank you, Eric R. Thank you. Ronnie Mund is in. Hi. Oh, wow, we have a super chat. Thank you. Guillermo, Handyman to the Stars, $2 super chat. Thank you. That really helps a lot. No, you can't. Chris 048, Carl's Frosted Tips. Does your husband sell propane and propane accessories? No. We do have some accessories on the Amazon store. No, they don't. Chris Hall, Gail, when you make spaghetti, do you call it? Sometimes propane or gas. I think we're getting a little off topic here. Good to know. Allie and Tony do improv. Welcome. John's Earmites. Good to know. Johnny Mars. SG Fanboy. H is for Heretic. Okay, Sidekick Chick. It's going to be illegal to hurt a dog. Okay, you all. Mine actually is. So we don't give him peanut butter. Coach King, hi and welcome. So yeah, we don't do that. That's gross. Don't ask. And here we go. Okay. Super chats, Ronnie Munn Jr. Thank you. Carl's Frosted Tips, thank you for the super chats. El Diablo, super chat, thank you very much. Over 50 and Fantabulous, thank you for the sticker. APAR, thank you for the, it doesn't say if it's super chat or what, but thank you very much. Frank, thank you, Frank, for the $4.99. Wow. SG Fanboy, thank you very much for the $20. Frank, $4.99. Probably not. Rob Solid Trainer. I don't know who this person is. But thank you all for your super chats. It's very helpful. I don't have a bill because we don't do that. Hi, Gail. Have fun and roll with us from TSN. Okay, thank you. No, I'm sorry we don't do medicals. If he wants to. And Coach King, thank you. All in good fun, Gail. Thank you for the super chats, and the financial support is huge. Candy loves peanut butter. However, she's not tolerating chicken now that she is getting older. I understand. Aw, thank you. I don't know who that is, but thank you, I guess. I don't know. The judge at Levels, thank you for being a good sport. Aw, thank you all for coming in. We have 46 in the house. Thank you so much. I don't know whose raid this is, but I appreciate it. So, and we're here on Saturday nights at 7:30 Eastern time. So, yeah, so y'all know where to find us now. And let's see here. Chow also. Hi, Shallee, Bob's in, Frog, and Hey Don. Hey. Chow, Judge of Levels says Chow. So Chow to you too. So yeah, so that's some of the questions. Let me go back to this. Thank you all, Jenny G. Thank you. Ha. Okay, that's bad. Let's see. How are service dogs different from emotional support animals? Okay. We have talked about this a couple of other times, but I wanted to include it again this time because it was such an important question and it keeps coming up. But I want everybody to know that emotional support animals, that designation works for housing. It doesn't work for keeping your dog with you or anything like that, other than in your housing. Emotional support animals usually are not trained in necessarily good manners and behavior. Some are, and to the ones that are, thank you very much. But by and large, the difference is in the training. Because, any breed can be a service dog and any breed can be an ESA. But you have to have a disability and your dog has to be trained to assist with that disability. So if you're like me and you don't walk well and your dog is trained to balance and counterbalance, then there you go. That dog is a service dog. If your dog is trained to do anything that mitigates that disability, that's what the service dog is. Now, emotional support animals provide emotional support. And sometimes people get that confused with the help that they give someone who has PTSD. Okay. So in PTSD, a lot of times you have anxiety. I'm definitely guilty of that. That's just part of it. But you don't have to have anxiety to the level that it's part of a disability. And that's the difference. That's where emotional support can come into play. So if you have PTSD and anxiety, your dog can be trained to help stop that anxiety attack, where your ESA does not have that training. So that's really the difference. It's the training right there. So let's see. Oh, come on. Okay, and Candy is saying also you must have a letter from your doctor to have an ESA, emotional support animal. You do? If you're going to apply that to housing. Now, if you're in your own home and you don't necessarily have to have the letter as I understand it, but Candy, you've had the ESA, so you're the one that's going to be the pro on that. So We will cede to your judgment. Okay. What are the legal rights of a service dog handler in public places? Um, you have the legal right to be wherever you are. Your service dog has the right to be with you in most places that humans can go. So if you go into a restaurant, your service dog can go into a restaurant. If you go to a hotel for lodging, your service dog can be there too. You have the right not to be harassed. You have the right to be left alone. You have the right to be yourself with the freedom to do anything that you want and are able to do. And your service dog has the right to be there with you. There are some times, though, when just because your service dog is allowed, it doesn't always mean that your dog should. For example, I stopped at a rest area. I don't remember now. I think it was Oregon. It could have been Texas. I know there's a rest area in Texas that has the signs, but the sign said, beware of rattlesnakes, stay on the trail. And even though he's allowed with me on the trail, I didn't feel like that was a good, safe place for my service dog to be. So I'm going to say that places like that, you might not, even though your dog's allowed, you may not want to have your service dog. The other thing is, I went to Denali National Park in Alaska. Alaska is like my favorite state. I love the people there. They're amazing. And, you know, I went to Denali National Park. There's really like two sections of the park. It's really like that at a lot of parks. But you have the section up here at the visitor center. No problem with the service dog being around the visitor center. No problem at all. However, there is this section beyond the visitor center, deeper into the park, and they were like, don't get your dog out of the car. And I was like, I'm pretty sure he's allowed because he's a service dog. And I think if I get out of the car, he's allowed. Well, come to find out, it was an area with grizzly bears. Grizzly bears, moose, they don't like dogs. They don't know that your dog is a sweet little dog. They know wolves. So really, yeah, you could push it, but do you really want to? So use some common sense. That's all. Let's see. Candy Service Dog says that's for apartment buildings with 4 or more units. That's for ESAs. Okay, that's good to know. Very good to know. And I want to thank you all, everybody that's a guest here. I want to thank you all for coming in. Please, while you're here, don't forget to give me a like on the video because that does help a lot. And let's go down to the next question. This is actually one of my favorite questions that I get asked. How long does it take to train a service dog? People ask me this all the time because sometimes people are under the impression that they can go to a shelter, pick a dog out at random. The dog's going to be their service dog, and they can spend a couple of weeks training the dog, and then boom, the dog's a service dog. No, it takes time to train a service dog. And let's see, I'm going through. Zion, the service dog, hi and welcome. And we've got, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. Melendez, I do have that part. Have a nice evening, Gail. Thank you. Thank you for coming in. So the training takes time, and that's just the way it is. The dog has to get to know you and has to grow and mature. you're actually losing about the same amount of time whether you own or train or go with the program dog. It is going to take minimum a year, more likely 1.5 to 2 years of training. It just takes that long because the dog has to grow and mature and he has to learn the skills, and she needs time to do that. So, there's really, you can't really short circuit it because your dog just needs that time. So, minimum of a year, can take 2, often takes 18 months. Thank you, Zion. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think he knows it too, right? Don't all of our service dogs know they are? So, yeah. Okay. Can service dogs be trained to assist with multiple disabilities? Yes, they can, and often are. And that's because oftentimes people have more than one disability. So, like in my case, I did mention earlier that you have diabetic assistance because you've got and alerts, seizure alerts, asthma alerts at night, and you've got the balancing and the bracing. So he helps with medical alerts on different types, as well as the balancing and bracing. So I'm just one example of the dogs that are trained for multiple disabilities, but most of them are because most of us have more than one disability going on. Let's see. Zion is asking, how old is your doggy? He is over 2 years old. Actually, pushing 2.5 years old. So, let's see. And I will say this: it took a good close to 2 years to train my first service dog, and this one was one of the younger dogs that the program graduated, and he graduated at 13 months. But with that 13 months, he still needed a little more training, and I was able to do that based on my previous experience, really more fine tuning to fit my needs personally. So, and you're always going to have some of that. Let's see. What should you do if you encounter a service dog in public? Most of the time, nothing. Ignore the service dog, ignore the handler. If you feel like you need to say something, say it to the handler, not the service dog. Don't call the service dog. Don't reach down and pet the dog. Literally do nothing. But if you see a service dog walking around and the service dog is not with its handler, let's say it's vested, and you know it's a service dog, but the handler is missing and the dog is wandering, then go to the dog. See if the dog will take you to its handler and find out what's wrong. If the dog has a phone number on its collar, call that number. Because if you have a fully vested service dog or marking of any kind to let you know that it's a service dog, if they're away from their handler, chances are there's a problem. Service dogs don't just walk around by themselves. So that would be the only time that I would say pay attention to the dog. Would you all agree with me? I know we've got other service dog handlers in here. If you all think I'm off base, say so. Let's educate each other. Otherwise, I would say just leave the dog alone. And for Pete's sakes, don't engage in drive-by petting. And what I mean by that is people will walk right past my dog and start rubbing his head as they walk past. Don't do that. I swear, I am so tempted to get one of these patches that say, caution, owner bites. So tempted. So tempted. And I want to bring out the point that Zion the service dog is bringing out. It's crazy how much kids have more respect than adults when it comes to service animals. But sometimes kids are disrespectful and come up and pet your dog without asking, but even the parents. And I can understand that when it comes from a child much more than I can understand that when it comes to a parent. Uh, Most of the time, I think with this dog, most of the time I have it a little easier with him because he's in mobility harness. And if I have somebody that comes up, like what happened at the hospital actually yesterday was, or day before yesterday, somebody came up to me, a kid did, and he's like, "Hey, can I pet your dog?" And I'm like, "No, I'm sorry, he's working." And the mom just kind of looked at me and she's like, "Well, you're standing there, so what is your dog doing?" And she was very careful to say, "I'm not being disrespectful. I want to understand." And I said, "Well, actually, while I am standing here, I am holding on to his harness. So he is helping me not lose my balance. And if your son comes over and pets my service dog, then if my service dog shifts, I can very easily lose my balance. And that has happened." And she was like, "Oh," and she was great. Okay. She was great. Um, we shouldn't have to educate the public all the time, but sometimes we do. And it's adults more than kids. So, yeah. I actually had this really cute thing happen in Canada. And I know we're a little off topic. What should you do if you encounter a service dog in public? But it kind of goes with that. So I was at a Walmart somewhere in Canada. I don't remember now if it was Edmonton or if I was on the Alaska Highway. But I was in the Walmart and this little girl, I'm going to say early elementary probably, she stops her mom and she's like, "Mom, that's a service dog." And I'm like, "Oh boy, here we go." And she's like, "You know what, Mom? You don't pet service dogs. You have to leave them alone because they're very important because they're working." And the mom was like, "Okay, tell me more about service dogs, honey." And you could tell that she was wanting to know what her daughter knew about service dogs. And I'm having to get stuff off of this aisle, so I'm kind of listening while this is going on. And I'm just kind of cringing a little bit on the inside because I'm expecting one of them to start in about how we really can't pet him and we want to and all that stuff. So she was standing there, and she's like, "They're very important. They have work to do, and we have to let them do their work." And the mom's like, "Yes, we do. And it is extremely important. And we don't want to bother anybody that does that." And she's like, "Nope. And we can't bother therapy dogs either." And I'm like, "Yay, this little girl gets it." And so I heard her mom say, "Well, what's the difference in a therapy dog and a service dog?" And they were walking away from me as the little girl was asking. But it's very obvious that both she and her mother were knowledgeable about service dogs. I just love that. Absolutely just love that because that's what we need is more understanding, don't we, folks? So, yeah, I just love that this kid had so much respect and the mom too. Um, Candy Candy the Wee Service Dog is saying that Candy is old, 11 and a half years old. That is so cool. Texas Service Dog Team says she agrees. Oh, yeah, Candy's making the point that also barking is allowed to alert the handler or to get somebody's attention to help the handler. Yes. And I think that's what the hospital was getting with me about with how does your dog alert? So they would know if he started barking. It's really, I thought it was nice that they cared enough to ask. And let's see. Yes, absolutely. I've had kids as young as 4 years old educate their parents about service dogs and what not to do. Also, be aware that we are ambassadors for service dog teams, whether we want to or not. Keep this in mind. And I think that's really important. And it's so easy to get frustrated. It really is. And something that's helped me, I have these cards that I give out, and they're not like little printed business cards, and they're out in the car. I don't have one in here. I'll try to remember to get one for the next live stream. No promises. My mind works like a sieve. Just saying. So I have these little cards though, and they have Pipsy's paw print on the card. They're about 1/4 of a size sheet of paper, and every once in a while we'll get the paint out and we'll do a bunch of cards. And with that is a paragraph that says, "Hi, I'm a service dog. Because I'm a trained service dog, I can go most places where mom can go. I'm trained to do multiple things, but primarily I do medical alert and balance." And it references the ADA. And I think I've got the website on there too. Not 100% sure on that. But if I don't have time to stand there and talk to somebody, or if I've got a child that seems to be genuinely interested, or they just ask, "Can I pet?" and I say no, and they accept that, I'll say, "But I have a paw print. Would you like his paw print?" And they are always like thrilled to get something. And that really helps educate, and it gives them a reference. But I have also used it a few times when I've been in a business and they've said, "Is that a service dog?" "Sure, I've got this card on him. What would you like to know?" So, yeah. So, and I think that helps with the whole ambassadorship that Candy has referenced. Okay, I'm going to answer this one. Okay, according to this, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more questions. It's 1:12. I'm going to go ahead and answer a couple of more, but I'm going to discontinue it at 9. Okay, probably. So anyway, how do you maintain a service dog's training and skills? I was really glad about this question. And that goes back to, I think sometimes people think that the service dog training is a one and done kind of deal. A few minutes ago, I referenced and said that my boy was just over a year when we were partnered, but he still needed some training. Anytime you get a service dog from a program, there's going to be some fine tuning that you're going to do to help make that dog attuned to your personal changes. You may have a dog that is trained in diabetic response, and maybe he's trained in scent samples and knows the basics of alerting, but that service dog doesn't know your body. So you still need to work with the dog some to get him used to you and your changes, okay? The other thing is you've got to work with your service dog to keep this training up. Now, I have a couple of shorts, YouTube shorts, that are up there that you guys can see where it's been a rainy day and we've done things in the house. So I've put down, let's say, 3 different items. I think one of the videos got a prescription bottle, my asthma pouch, and I forgot, bottle of water, let's just say. I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look at the shorts. So I will say, bring him over and say, "Okay, Pipsy, go get," and tell him the item. And he will bring me back the correct item. Or I will drop something and I will tell him, "Wait," before he comes in and picks it up, because he recognizes the sound. He recognizes it when I go, "Uh-oh," because I usually just do that when I drop something, or "Oh, oops," or "Whoops," and things like that usually say when you drop something. And I'll give him that wait command, because I don't want to go out in public and somebody else drop something and him dive in and pick it up. So always want to reinforce those skills. If you're going outside for a WALK, I don't want to say that too loud because he's right there. Um, if you go outside, then you want to make sure you practice heel and so forth. So sorry. Yeah, you know what that word is, don't you? Yeah, sorry. But so he'll practice walking on the right side. You always want to do things like that because you always want to make sure that your service dog is at the top of his game. Okay. And if you make sure that your service dog is on top of the game, if you make sure that he is practicing his heels and so forth, then you're making sure that you don't have any problems when the need arises and that you can 100% rely on your dog. Okay. Yeah, Candy is saying service training never ends. The old saying is true, use it or lose it. Yeah, and it's kind of like people are like, well, doesn't your dog know? Well, yeah, your dog knows. And it's like, we know, most of us or a lot of us have been taught at one time or another in our life how to eat at a formal table. We know where the bread plate is. We know which glass is for which drink, which fork to use, and so forth. But most of us, if we know we're going to a formal dinner, are pulling out our cell phones and double checking the information just to make sure. And that's because it's generally not a skill that we use every day. Service dogs are like that. You know, you have to keep up with it. Kind of like the calculus that we all had to learn in school. I couldn't do a calculus question to save my life if I had to. And that's even without having dyscalculia. Okay, Texas Service Dog Team. Story is retired, but she doesn't realize it other than not leaving the house with me. She still does her tasks at home. There you go. Now I'm going to pull that up here again. In retirement, your dogs have been trained all of their lives, and there are some things that they're just going to do. And Tomlin, my first service dog, if I dropped something, he knew to go get it, and he was doing that even when he was older and starting to get sick, like even a week before he passed away, because that's fun time. That's fetching something. That's like, oh boy, let's have fun. So she's retired, but she doesn't realize it other than not leaving the house. There you go. Candy's saying, I review at one task skill each day for 15 minutes, 3 times a day in 5-minute intervals. Also keep up basic commands. And there you go. Texas Service Dog Team, when she hears something hit the ground, she comes running. Tipsy does too. And I will give him that wait command quite often, not all the time, but quite often, just so, he knows. And a lot of times he'll come running in and then he'll pause and he'll just look at me and I'll nod my head and he's on it. So, but that's an awesome skill, really. And that's their playtime. They love that. So, okay, this is going to be a question that the next one is, what is the cost of getting and training a service dog? I'm going to answer that briefly because it's something I think I need to go into a little bit more. I don't think that 10 minutes is necessarily going to cover it unless y'all want to stay. Usually I cut this at an hour because I want to be cognizant of people's time. But if you guys want to stay a little longer, then I'll go into it more in depth. But what is the cost of getting and training a service dog? And there's a couple of ways, three basic ways that you can go. And that is, you can fully owner train your service dog. You can train a service dog with the help of trainers. or you can go with a program dog. In those three choices, there's a lot of variation. Um, it's going to depend on where you are, if you go with a trainer, and the experience the trainer has, and what training programs are running, training sessions are running in your area. So even among the three variations, there's still going to be variations. And it also matters what kind of task you need your dog to do and how far advanced that is. For complete owner training, you go and get the dog, you completely train the dog by yourself, and you don't have to have any cost associated with getting the dog trained or anything like that, because you've already done that. You've gotten the knowledge yourself. And a lot of people do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you have that skill and that's what you want to do, you can do that. The other way, I have to get a drink here. Hold on a second. The second option is to owner train with trainers. And also, kind of mixed in with that is the option that you can fully get a trainer to train your dog. So that's kind of two different variations of the same thing. So you've got, if you work with trainers, then you've got the cost of the dog, whether you get him from a shelter or whatever. Then you've got the cost of the training classes. Usually, this means different levels of training classes. So you're going to have possibly a toilet training class, which is very helpful. I always suggest that, even if you're looking at a service dog and you're trying to find a trainer, I kind of always suggest that you do that little potty training class that so many of them offer, just so you can see the trainer in action with your dog. They're usually like $25-$30, the ones I've seen. But it's a good opportunity to see the trainer in action with your dog in class. So you're going to have that. And then you're going to generally have just some basic training for your dog. You know, your sit, stay, so forth. Then you're going to have another level, often that's an intermediate training, which is a little bit more advanced. And then oftentimes you're going to have your advanced training. And then you can get into some service dog training specifics. Now, again, there's variations in that. But when I was looking at Pipsy, I knew Tomlin was getting older. It was getting close to deciding, what to do. So for that, I started looking around and I started calling different trainers. The two that I had worked with, unfortunately, had some health problems and so forth and weren't training anymore. Or I would have gone back to them because I just think they were fabulous. But unfortunately, stroke and other health issues came for them. I started calling trainers, though, to see what the cost was going to run. Those training classes that I just mentioned were going to be several $1,000s, okay? Getting my service dog from a program was going to be several $1,000s. Then Texas Service Dog Team is saying, remember the non-monetary costs. You have some of that. You've got your emotional time, your emotional expense that you've got to put into the training. So when I started looking for a program dog, and I'm kind of trying to rush this all in here. So when I started looking for dogs, I looked first at the trainers and the training costs. And what I saw very, very quickly was that for the type of training that I needed, You've got to go through all those classes first. Okay? Then you get into the service dog training for the specifics. So I was going to look at between 3,500 and 4,000 for the training classes before getting into the advanced classes that we were going to need for the dog to become a service dog. Because just because your dog is trained in manners and how to bring something back and play fetch and sit and stay, that's the beginning part. I want everybody to hear this. That is your beginning part. That does not a service dog make. Okay? Your service dog becomes a service dog when the dog completes the training that you need for your disability. So you have to go through all these other training courses and then get there. Okay. So I was looking at those costs, and then I was looking at the cost of private lessons with the trainer to train him on these specifics. It was going to cost me around $5,000 at minimum for the training of the dog. But here's the thing. During this year, 18 months, or 2 years, you have a service dog you can't use because he's in training, right? So you have the vet bills, the food, all of the gear, and the toys, and the treats. And the treats. Let me say that a little lower here. And all those things that you need for your dog during the time that you're also going for your trainings. So you're losing, and this kind of goes into why is the wait so long, which is our next question. And we've kind of already touched on that a little bit because of the training. So you've got to factor in that time that you can't use your dog because your dog's not trained yet, and all those expenses. So you've got getting the dog. Whether you go to a shelter or a purebred, you've still got costs involved with getting your dog, right? Then you've got spaying and neutering because you don't want to take a non-neutered male out in public, and you don't want to take a non-spayed female out in public because during those particular times of heat, you don't want every other dog coming to you. So you want your dog spayed or neutered, and you've got that expense. You've got all the vet bills and the food and stuff, but you've also got your crate, your mattress, your gear, and all the other things that go into regular dog ownership plus service dog ownership. So when I did the math, and then you've got the cost of going to the training, we're talking gasoline, those extra stops that you make through Starbucks that you wouldn't make because you'd be at home and yet you're out. So you're making that Starbucks stop on the way to and from training class. All of that goes into the cost of your dog. And when I looked at all of that, and I started looking at service dog training programs, very quickly it became apparent that for a reasonably priced service dog program, I was going to be just as well to go with a fully trained dog as I was going to be to take my dog to trainers all the time. The other thing is that's a lot of wear and tear on you physically and emotionally. And you're going to spend, let me tell you, from having trained my first service dog, you are going to spend a good 20 to 30 minutes a day, solid, every day, training your service dog. And if you're not doing it right. Because your dog, you have to get your dog to the top of the game, and then you have to keep your dog there. So for me, looking at the costs, generally with a service dog program, at least the ones I looked at, and I looked at a ton of service dog programs before picking mine, but typically you always have, or most of the time you have, the cost of the program. Then you have to go on site from anywhere to a week to 2 weeks for what I kind of call doggy boot camp. And that's where you learn how to work with your dog, because you've got to learn the commands that your dog has been taught. Okay. And you have to be able to work with the dog and so forth. So when I looked at all the costs, it was going to be just as cost effective to get a dog from a program, because they're taking care of all the vet bills and all the food bills and all the other bills for the first year, 18 months, or 2 years, however long it takes to get the dog trained. And that factors in. So it was very apparent to me that, given all the costs of going to the classes and taking the classes and getting the dog, I was going to spend over 10K, I felt like, doing that. Of course, I'm not really close to a service dog training program either. Maybe if you live right next door to someone and your gas is just right there, it might be different. And if you're looking at trying to decide whether you want to go with a trainer or whether you want to go with a program, take a pen and paper, write everything down. How much do you think you're going to spend for the dog? How much does your vet charge for spaying and neutering, etc.? And just really add up all those costs, because it'll help you decide which way you want to go. Let's see. My veterinarian has advised to allow Candy to work as she wants. She will show me she doesn't want to do public access anymore. My vet has a lot of experience with service dogs, and she has concern that service dogs can suffer separation anxiety. That's a real concern. If they have separation anxiety, they may need anti-anxiety medication. That probably could happen. I can see that. I can definitely see that. I owner trained Candy because the cost for programs and organizations are expensive. There's a long waiting list to get a dog, especially small breed dogs in my state. And that's true. But part of, let me just say that with programs, part of the reason why the wait is so long, we've already kind of talked about before that the dog has to grow and has to mature. So with the programs, the ones that I looked at, and like I said, I looked at a bunch. So the way they all seem to work, at least the ones I looked at, and if your experience is different, then absolutely toss that in. But when you applied and your application was accepted, that's when they start looking for the dog for you. And so they go through the breeding program and the breeding stock, and they see what lineage has produced the dogs that more consistently have been successful in the skills that you need. At that point, you got to wait for the dog to be born, or you've got the dog to wait to grow up from baby puppyhood. And so you've got that time where you're waiting for the dog to be bred, and you've got the time where you're waiting for it to grow up and waiting for it to be able to pass that public access test. And that just takes time. So depending on what you need, generally you're losing that time anyway, because your dog's got to grow and mature. You can't rush that process. The dogs are only going to grow as fast as they're going to grow, and they're only going to mature as fast as they're going to mature, right? So you're going to kind of lose that. And that was a big factor in me deciding to go with a program dog, because you've got all those costs associated with having a dog that you can't use just because it's not been trained yet. So, yeah, that counts. But you're right, there is a long waiting list. And sometimes, you'll get into a situation where an agency will say, we got an 18-month wait. And then you may get called 4 months later, because sometimes people are no longer where they can have a service dog, because you do kind of have to be physically able to take care of a dog's biological functions. And sometimes things happen and we're not able to do that. So I have talked to a couple of people who were on this 18-month waiting list, and then they got called in just a few months because a person who happened to need a dog trained for the same things they did, they weren't able to take the training, the doggy boot camp, and pick up their dog. So they were the next person on the list that needed a dog of those skills, so they got bumped up. That does happen. So, okay, going back to the chat. Texas Service Dog Team said, yeah, my program called it a placement class. 2 weeks in Colorado at my expense, but the dog was free. Yeah, that's very, very common. Most of the programs have something. I actually talked to one family who was getting a service dog for their child. We were all out at a restaurant and we were commenting on each other's service dogs because we were kind of joking because their service dog was a yellow lab and here I have a yellow lab, and they're like, wow, we better make sure we don't get these two mixed up. Just joking. They're both marked differently, but in their case, they had to pay for their trainer to fly in from their program. Apparently, they went there for like a couple of days for short camp, and then the trainer flew out to them, and the trainer flying out to them, and that whole week the trainer was with them. That was all on the family's expense, not included in the cost of the service dog. So you do have that sometimes too. Okay, Candy says, I have friends that live in various parts of my state. You must be very self-disciplined and knowledgeable in training or study from various sources. Yes, you do. If you're going to be successful training a service dog, whether you're getting it from a program, you want to make sure that they're up to date and have training in lots of aspects of your dog. Same thing about if you're getting a program. You really want to make sure that the program is on top of things too. And most of them are. So, yeah. And I will say my particular program that I went with was a $7,000 program, not counting your expense of getting to Kansas and staying for 2 weeks in Kansas. And we lucked up. I will say. That's because when we got to this town in Kansas, we took the RV praying this whole time that we were going to be able to get a spot at this campground because they had a campground in this town that thankfully it wound up they do a certain number of days for free, and then if you stay beyond that for a week, then they ask for a $100 donation to cover the rest of your stay. Water, electricity, dump station, it was all included. And I just about boo-hooed at that because hotels are not cheap. They were not cheap in 2022, and they ain't going down in price. Okay? So, yeah. So yeah, that's part of what goes into getting a service dog. And then there's some like miscellaneous little things. Like in order to get a service dog from a program, they want to know that you indeed have a disability. So in order to do that, you have to go to your doctor and get your doctor to sign off on it. That generally means writing a letter. So you've got your copay or your doctor visit expense. And you've got the expense. Some doctor's offices are charging now to do letters. Mine didn't, but some are. So you've got that expense. So you don't have that portion of the expense if you go with a trainer locally or if you train the dog yourself. So that's something else to think about. In my case, I just worked it in with one of my regular appointments, and I'm like, hey, by the way, it's time for me to look at getting another service dog. Can you write a letter for me? And she was like, oh, yeah, no problem. Texas Service Dog Team. Yep, my doctor had to write a prescription for my first service dog. Yeah, because they want to know. that you have the disability, because some people just want to claim their dog's a service dog so they can take it places. Yeah. And so getting the prescription or getting the letter, that circumvents all that. That's true. Also, sometimes even the best trained dogs aren't compatible for you. That is true. Um, and this is like kind of like a marriage, you know. There are times that it works better than others, and some people that you're more compatible with. Same with dogs. They've got the personalities. Same with dogs, and it doesn't always start out on the perfect footing necessarily, and the relationship has to grow. Let's see. Texas Service Dog Team. For Story, I sent them my VA disability rating and disabilities listed. There you go. And some places you've got to send in your doctor's records too. So, and we can talk more about what some agencies want as far as documentation in the process for some agencies. But that takes us through why is the wait so long? And I kind of answered, is it cheaper to, hello? I kind of answered, is it cheaper to buy a service dog, get one trained, or trained it myself? I kind of talked about that a little bit. Can service dogs go on airplanes and other forms of transportation? Yes, because they can go most places you can go. Hello. How to tell if a service dog training organization is legit? Super briefly, and we can talk about this on another stream. Ask people. Look up, if they're a charity, go to the irs.gov and look up their 501c3, because all nonprofits have to do that to keep their tax exempt status. And when you pull up that form, it tells you lots about the organization. So there you go. So that helps. And you can do internet searches and look at reviews. And when you talk to someone, I really need to do a video or stream on this, but when you talk to someone and you ask them, where did you get your dog trained and are you satisfied with it? They'll usually go, oh yeah, he's a great dog, or she is wonderful. What you want to know is not just that the dog is wonderful, but you want to know about the training the dog has. Would they suggest the training done from this service dog agency? A little bit more specific than, oh, the dog is wonderful. Well, most dogs are wonderful. Okay, we love them. We have them for a reason. Excuse me. Whether they're a service dog or a pet, we have them for a reason. So they're all wonderful, and you can kind of assume that when you talk to somebody. So what you want to know is what makes the training organization that they got them from wonderful. One of the things that I looked for in the training organization was not just the 501c3 and the reviews. And I put it out there on the internet, and I'm like, I need to find a training organization. Who are you all trained with? And got a bunch of responses. My asthma I mentioned. Here we go. So it was really interesting. The same organization kept coming up. So after I'd looked at a lot of organizations coast to coast, the decision became pretty apparent. And one of the things that I wanted was a prison training program, because the dogs who are in prison are getting 24/7 training while they're in prison. They're always in classes. They're always with the prisoner. They're always being worked with. And that can't compare to going for a weekly 1-hour training course. So that's what I wanted. But anyway, I'll look at that a little bit more. Let's see. Oh, Texas Service Dog. Where did you get the questions from? I mostly went through the comment sections going back to way back when with Tomlin and pulled the questions from there. Some of them are questions that I just get asked a lot when I go out, like, when they see me taking a dog out of the van and they see he's got a harness, they're like, will usually stop and they'll say something like, "Is it really safe to do that?" Yes. So things like that. But a lot of them from the comments. I also posted a while back on my Facebook group. And so I got some questions, messaged me through there. I got some emails. So, yeah, different places. So I hope that helps. Let's see. Yeah, and Candy the Wee Service Dog says there are dogs who do well with a handler but don't do well with other members in the family. That's true. And you've got a marriage with them too. So, yeah. So you got to make things work. Real quick, I'll just end with this one thought, and that is, if you do go with a program trained service dog, and if I don't mention this when I do a program on program trained service dogs, then somebody message me. But you've got over a 50% washout rate on dogs that you pick out and train. And with a program, you have more like, I think that like 75 or 80% of the dogs make it through the dog training program. They're constantly testing at various stages when they go through a service dog program. But if it gets to the point where your dog washes, if it washes within a certain period of time, then that's on the program. So they got to replace your dog. Whereas you're taking the full risk if you do it yourself. And that's something else to think about too. So, anyway, thank you all for coming and hanging out tonight. I am starting to run out of air. So, I appreciate you all being here. Usually I keep this to an hour, but we did go over and we're actually close to the 2 hour mark. But if y'all have any questions, drop them down in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them on a future live stream or a future video. Come join us in our Facebook group. That link is facebook.com/groups/Gale Vlogs, GAYLE VLOGS. So thank you all. Go out, have a great weekend. Always be bodacious. Do not let life get in the way of living. I'll see you all Saturday night at 7:30 Eastern, right here. Good night, you all.